Like so many other speakers, I have often begun by relating how much of a pleasure, joy, or honor it is to be speaking in whatever venue I find myself. On this day, when we remember the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that someone, anyone would trust that I could say anything worthy of his memory, that is an honor. And so let me say to you that I have spoken before crowds large and small, having run for office in the past, have spoken on the prestigious campus of Harvard University. But it is here today, that I feel a certain kind of nervousness, a nervousness born of an understanding of whose shadow I stand in, of an understanding of the importance of the subject matter, the vote, the black vote. We could spend our time this morning reflecting on the history, the struggle for the black vote, but somehow I get the sense that you know about this. If I can, I would like to suggest that we focus on history that is to be written for black folk by talking about our vote now. You see, we speak about black history as if it happened when the slaves were emancipated, when Rosa Parks sat down, when Martin Luther King articulated the dream. For too many of us, history is disconnected from our reality. You might get a cumulative 20 or 30 years if you add up history in the way that I just articulated to you. But something is wrong when a people who have always been, in America, in the world, have a history whose narrative adds up to such a small span. No, our history, all history, that is to be written tomorrow, to be read by our children, to serve as their guide is written in our actions today. I like to say that a greater call to responsibility I have not known. Our history is not disconnected from us. Our actions are dictating it as we speak. Martin Luther King is not disconnected, some historical figure, an icon. I'm getting to the vote. Just bear with me a little while. The iconization of King is like the typical manner in which we view history. Allows us to excuse our inactivity. How can I do as Martin King, who stood before thousands as leaders of what the historic figure Malcolm X said was impossible, a bloodless revolution, in relative terms, and spoken towards the dream? How can I? But the dream that Martin articulated was not his own. That dream was born in the words and actions of another misunderstood and wrongly iconized messenger, Jesus Christ. It is when we, like King, realize that they did not come to make us idol worshippers, but to be examples that we must follow. Action. It is through action. If you understand King, then you must understand that the moral arc of which he speaks is like light, and that yes, it bends towards justice, but only because of the prism through which it moves. And that prism, in a figurative sense, is us. Here's where Jesus' message of love of neighbor, where King's example of actions begin to make sense. And so today, we cannot expect that the right thing will just happen, that the right people will be elected. We must get active if we have not been. And if we have, we must redouble our efforts. We must move beyond arguments about the merits of affirmative action and begin to act in the affirmative. Why should we vote? Because it is the least we can do. In a struggle to be treated as men and women, we have allowed ourselves to be satiated with what I regard as the 4/5 compromise. That blacks were once considered 3/5 of a person was wrong, but now, blacks have come a long way. And we may not be where we should be, but patience, civility, quietness will take us the rest of the way. We are content with being 4/5 of a person. Why should we vote? Because our vote counts. I often tell people who say their vote doesn't count not to think about if you cast a vote for Obama or Giuliani, if that candidate wins. But to consider for a moment the dumbest criminal you've ever heard of, you've ever conceived of. Even that person knew enough to only steal something of value. Now then, consider the men in suits who pull the levers of government and business. These men worked, and not so long ago, to steal, to suppress votes. They did not do this because those votes had no value, and we should not do the work for them by not voting. Your vote counts. History, your children and grandchildren are calling you to responsibility, to action. Why should we vote? Because Hillary Clinton Senator and wife, not of the first black president, but of the 42nd white president, should not win without us, because Barack Obama's message of hope is empty if hope without belief. Because John Edwards speaks to conditions we experience across color lines, and because they have faults. We must vote because Giuliani may be America's mayor, but King reminded us to study war no more. We must vote because we have seen that playing a saxophone is not the qualification for the moral standing of a president, and neither is Mike Huckabee's bass. Because like a shiny toy, Mitt Romney is good looking, but when you spend some time, you see things that you had not noticed. Because not just this election, but every election is critical, because our lives, the very course they will take, depends on our vote. Let me leave you with this. I mentioned a moment ago hope. Understand that the fire in the bones of those who came before, that fire that hoses could not extinguish, that is not the fire of hope. That is the fire of belief. Hope allows us to hold on. Belief gives us reason to act. Beyond hope, there is belief. Martin looked out from the mountaintop and told us that he could see our hopes realized, and that even though he might not get there with us, we needed to believe enough to continue down off that mountain. Why should we vote?